Do you know Congressman Corey Mills?
I do know Mr. Mills. And would you like me to answer some of the
No,
questions?
let me
and some
just
of the
ask
points?
you. You know,
And in fact, I served with Mr. Mills in Iraq.
do you realize who did he tell a number of people when he rescued the stranded Afghanistans as best he could, and then other countries? Who did he say was his biggest threat from this administration when he was flying over there?
Well, I'm going to take this as a rhetorical question. So if you want to tell me, that's fine. You can tell me.
No, what's your opinion?
If you would actually allow me to answer the numerous misrepresentations, I'd be happy to do so.
Look, I'm not going to let you filibuster here because we've got other
Well, I'm not
things
trying
to
to
go over.
filibuster.
All I'm saying is, ask him, Corey Mills, who went on the missions himself. The biggest threat, one of the biggest threats he faced was from this Biden administration shooting his plane down. He will tell you that today. And that is unbelievable coming from a patriot like Corey Mills is. Congressman Crow, you can put in I would like for you to give me the date and time that Donald Trump agreed to the withdrawal as Biden directed, because I don't think it's there.
Can I?
Very quickly. I'm not going to filibuster. You can dispute
I'm not looking to
everything.
filibuster. My name has been invoked several times, and I feel compelled. In fact, I think this committee has an obligation to allow me to respond to the things that have been said.
Up to a point. Mm-hmm. Just
Can I have some time to respond?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Can I, they say this was a success. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mr. Crow, we heard several statements that didn't seem to comport with what happened on the ground. It seems to me like Trump negotiated a pretty bad agreement, and then they want to forget about that. And the idea that Trump left it all stable. Why don't you respond to some of the issues that you just heard?
Well, thank you, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. First of all, I mean, this proceeding is another example. They literally don't want to talk about the issue, and they don't want to hear from people who have facts that would run contrary, right? They cherry-picked facts from their purported investigation. They make claims in this hearing and then don't allow me to respond to them. They are doing it through the Rules Committee instead of having a hearing that we could hold tomorrow, because we actually have a scheduled hearing tomorrow. We could have this debate. So they just don't want the truth, and that's pretty clear.
Congressman Crow, thank you for your service. This war in Afghanistan began in, I think, August of 2001. October of 2001. It ended with the withdrawal of August of 2021. Who ordered the evacuation?
Are you talking about the go to zero order? Are you talking about the Doha agreement? Or are you talking about
the withdrawal of the troops, the closing of the bases? What administration ordered that? Was it Donald Trump's or was it Joe Biden's?
Donald Trump is the president who entered into the Doha agreement in February of 2020. That agreement bound the United States to the Taliban to go to zero. So no U.S. service members, no contractors, all U.S. personnel out of the country within 14 months of the signing of that agreement.
Agreements can be modified by the current administration. Donald Trump tell me what date that he said he would follow the same, I guess, evacuation procedures that Biden did.
So
he said he wouldn't have. He would never have done it like this. He would have gotten the Americans out first.
In fact, indeed, in January of 2021, when President Biden came into office, during the transition, the Biden administration received zero information from the Trump administration on compliance with the agreement by the Taliban, where the interagency was on the review of the impact of a potential withdrawal. So all of that had to be reviewed. So the president ordered an interagency review starting in January in 2021. At the culmination of that interagency review, in April of 2021, President Biden decided to continue the withdrawal that was started by Donald Trump and substantially accomplished by Donald Trump. So when he came into office, it was the lowest number of troops since 2001 in Afghanistan because Donald Trump had started that withdrawal already.
But Donald Trump never made the statement he would do the withdrawal like Joe Biden did. He never has said that.
Yeah, that is true, because Donald Trump actually said he would do it faster and would have accomplished it in 2020. In fact, in 2020, fall of 2020,
He would have done
it.
Hold on, Congressman. He would have done it. He would have withdrawn every American there, and the troops would be the last one defending it. And it's really not. I mean, you bring him into this, it makes no difference. The 20-some years that we've been in this war, there was one evacuation. Americans died. They were left there. Who made the call to leave $7 billion worth of?
That's false, actually, that number,
is?
and I will get to that. Okay, I'll explain why that's false.
But
first of all,
was there? Let me ask you this: was there any supplies left? You can dispute the number, but was there any supplies left, and was there 54 million in currency left?
I would be happy to address that, but I'm going to first address your question about the withdrawal. In fact, it was Donald Trump who said unequivocally that he wanted to bring all the troops home by Christmas 2020.
He did not say.
And then his command.
out.
Let me finish, sir. And then his commander said, no, that's not going to work. That would be a disaster, right? So then they extended it, and then the Biden administration came in, and Joe Biden extended it even further, because under the Doha agreement, under the agreement that Donald Trump negotiated, all troops were going to have to be out by spring of 2020. But the military commander said that was not plausible and not good to do, because we all know that in military terms, retrograde operations, that's the military term for a withdrawal, are the riskiest, most complicated, and difficult things to do. So he listened to his commanders. They renegotiated with the Taliban to withdraw by August 2021, which is what they did.
He telegraphed what he was going to do, and he left American troops who died. That's the bottom line.
That is not true.
And he left, okay, well then, I guess the resolution that Chairman McCall's doing is for people who lived. I mean, for you to make that kind of statement really is amazing.
They
And
negotiated
I'm reclaiming my time.
and extended
I'm reclaiming my time. This administration was the administration that made the call to leave Americans there. This administration was the one that made the call to leave whatever amount of artillery, guns, SUVs in Afghanistan.
Sir, do you know where that $7 billion number comes from?
Okay, I'm going to finish I'm not going to tie this committee up. You can debate, it's been reported. I mean, you can have a different opinion. You can't have different facts.
I can tell you that number.
And so
Gentleman
the fact is,
from South Carolina controls the time.
the fact is that this administration bears responsibility for the deaths. Just like it's interesting, you said the Taliban, you made some comment about them being at war with America. They would have gone to war with America. Where the 15 million that are coming across here illegally, are they vetted to make sure there's no Taliban or terrorists? No. So this administration has blood on its hands. And this administration, with its policies, bears responsibility. And this resolution is the least we can do. Now, you can try to go back through the years where rights and wrongs were done, but there was one beginning and one withdrawal. And it does a disservice to these dead Americans. This administration has been a boondoggle, not just in this. American lives are endangered, just like the invasion at the border, that all kind of rhetoric is trying to say that Trump calls that. He did not. It's just not true. Donald Trump is not true that he said he would do the exact evacuation that Joe Biden did. He said he'd get the Americans out first, and they would be protected. So it's amazing we're having to even debate this resolution.
Would you like me to address any of the questions or any of the issues you raised?
It's just rhetoric. Not really, because
Okay, well, I'd be happy to correct the record and explain to you the misrepresentations in this that you're going to vote for.
I'm not. It's no consequence.
A couple of things that I think are really important, and there's more than we have time to dispel. But a couple of things. I did not co-chair the investigation. I was the ranking member of the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is the subcommittee that the majority established to conduct the bulk of the investigation, or their purported investigation into Afghanistan. And as the ranking member of that subcommittee, I never saw a draft report. In fact, I didn't see the report until it was publicly released. I had no say in their report. nor did they ever at any time engage with any of the minority staff or members in putting the report together. So that's just one illustration of many as to how this is a partisan hit job and not an effort to try to get to the truth. And that's the fact. And no, Afghanistan was not stable in January in 2021. Not only were there the lowest number of U.S. troops since 2001, but the Taliban had been advancing and taking territory since 2013. In fact, the U.S. military commander, General Scott Miller, in charge of all U.S. troops for the years leading up to 21 and during, testified that it was, quote, a slow bleed, end quote. We were losing. And Joe Biden had only two options left. Donald Trump gave him only two options because he didn't have enough troops on the ground. And all the military commanders said very clearly that if he had broken the Trump agreement with the Taliban, an agreement, by the way, that Donald Trump negotiated without the Afghan government, that gave no talk or no allocation for human rights or the rights of women, doesn't speak about that at all in the agreement, and actually says that the Afghan government had to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners. That's what Trump agreed to, that further destabilized the situation on the ground. That's what Joe Biden was facing. Either go back to war with the Taliban and surge troops in, however many, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000.
Let me just ask a question. So Trump negotiated agreement that called for the release of the Taliban prisoners.
Correct.
And when were they released?
They were released, they started to be released in 2020.
Right, so they were released under Trump.
Correct.
So Trump negotiated an agreement that releases all of these Taliban prisoners
Correct.
into society. Trump negotiates, from what you're telling me, Trump negotiates an agreement that brings down the troops to a slow bleed to very dangerous levels for the rest of the American troops. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's right.
Okay, so those are the facts of what was happening during Trump. It was not stable, is what you've now described.
Donald Trump's agreement agreed to the closure of bases, the reduction of troops and contractors, the release of Taliban prisoners, gave no accommodation whatsoever or requirement for human rights or the protection of women and girls, and completely excluded the Afghan government from those negotiations.
And does this resolution make reference to any of Trump's excellent negotiating skills in terms of, that sounds like a pretty lousy negotiating deal for America?
It simply references the agreement, but it talks about none of the components we just talked
Right.
about.
So, and are there any other elements that you want to correct with regards to the exchange that has taken place?
Yeah, one other thing, one of your colleagues mentioned something about $7 billion of weapons and equipment that were left behind. That number actually is the entirety of U.S. military weapons and equipment given to the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces over the entire 20 years of the war, right? Much of it destroyed in combat, much of it beyond its useful life, much of it left unserviceable after contractors and servicing and maintenance were not provided for. That is the entirety. So to take that number and to say that what was left in the hands of the Taliban is just completely misleading.
So the statement about the $7 billion, that was given to the Afghanis, so it was no longer our equipment? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's right. In fact, General Milley and General Miller testified very clearly during the transcribed interviews that the United States military took all of its equipment with them.
Is there anything else that you want to correct in the record?
Well, there's more than I think we have time for this evening, but certainly that's a good start.
There's no clock in the Rules Committee.
You're sure? This is it. This is the last Democrat that gets to ask questions.
This notion that the withdrawal, by the way, a lot of the challenges of the withdrawal, many of them, occurred because President Ghani fled the country. After President Ghani fled the country which nobody anticipated, by the way. Nobody thought that was going to happen. And I've spent much of my adult life either serving in Afghanistan, focused on Afghanistan issues. Nobody saw that coming. And then that led to the precipitous collapse of the Afghan military and the police forces, which then led to a very challenging withdrawal environment in that month. But there's no evidence that shows that the situation on the ground and the challenges at the airport in August of 2021 were avoidable. And that or let me be clear, that the attack on Abbey Gate and the death of those 13 members was avoidable. In fact, the Department of Defense's own investigation showed very clearly that there was never a positive ID of the bomber, and nobody knew who that person was. And the majority's assertion that reliance on the Taliban to run checkpoints is somehow related to that ignores the reality that the Taliban and the ISIS are actually sworn mortal enemies and continue to try to kill each other to this day. And in fact, the reliance on Taliban checkpoints made our troops safer, because instead of having to guard the outer perimeter and maintain those checkpoints, we were able to be in an inner perimeter. So these are many, many things that are false or misleading in this resolution, and I would urge my colleagues to not support it.
Thank you. I think that anytime we have the loss of life, and especially in incidents like that, it's very sad and it's hard for the country. It is unfortunate when it gets used in such a partisan and politicized manner like this. With that, Mr. Chair, I will yield back.